Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Philosophical Inquiries podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of ideas and the people who dared to shape the world with them. I'm Jack, and today we're going deep into the mind of Plato, one of history's most brilliant philosophers. We'll unpack his most famous work, The Republic, and explore the radical idea of philosopher kings, and then take an unexpected turn towards the Roman Empire to look at a military emperor, Aurelian, who may have embodied a philosophy all his own. What can a Greek philosopher and a Roman emperor, separated by 600 years, teach us about leadership and justice? Let's find out. Let's begin with Plato, a student of Socrates, teacher of Aristotle, and author of The Republic, which was written around 375 BCE. Plato wasn't just concerned with how the world was, he asked how the world ought to be. In The Republic, Plato lays out a vision of an ideal city, one governed not by warriors, not by merchants, but by philosophers. Why? Because philosophers, he believed, are the ones who truly love wisdom and truth. They're not in it for the power or the wealth, they seek what's good and what's just. He describes a tripartite society with three classes: producers, the workers, artisans, and farmers; auxiliaries, the warriors who defend the city; and the rulers, the philosopher kings. Each class has its own role, and justice, according to Plato, is when each class fulfills its role without interfering with the others. But the most provocative idea comes with the philosopher king. In Book 5 of the Republic, Plato declares something that even his contemporaries found radical. To quote Plato, "Unless philosophers rule as kings, or those who are called kings and leading men genuinely and adequately philosophize, there can be no rest from troubles for state." Plato believed that true justice would only be achieved when the rulers of society are guided by wisdom, not wealth, popularity, or brute force. A philosopher king, in Plato's mind, is trained in ethics, mathematics, dialectics, and the forms, especially the form of good, which represents the ultimate truth. This ruler sees beyond illusion, beyond appearances. He leads not for personal gain, but because he sees governance as a moral duty. Why does this matter now? Because it's this timeless question of who should lead us. In our own times, we wrestle with influence in money and politics, the charisma of demagogues, and the rise of technocrats. Pluto challenges us. What if we choose leaders not for their power, but for their capacity to think well? Imagine a world where deep knowledge and humility were prerequisites for leadership. Of course, Plato's vision wasn't without critics. Even fans of his philosophy have raised concerns. Can we really trust philosophers with power? Wouldn't they just become corrupt like anyone else? Isn't democracy, flawed as it is, more accountable than a wise elite? Even Plato admitted that his ideal city might never be fully realized, but he saw it as a model, a standard to aim for. His goal wasn't necessarily to lay a blueprint for policy, but to force us to think deeply. What is justice? What makes a ruler legitimate? And this brings us to a figure who in many ways seems worlds apart from Plato, a Roman emperor, a general, a warrior, Lucius Domitius Aurelianus, better known as Aurelian. Aurelian ruled the Roman Empire from 270 to 275 CE. A short reign, but a monumental one. He came to power during the crisis of the 3rd century, a period of economic collapse, civil war, and external invasions. The empire was splintering, morale was low, and enemies were closing in. Aurelian was not a philosopher in the classical Greek sense. He was a soldier emperor, but his actions suggested a philosophy of rule rooted in order, unity, and reform. He famously reconquered the breakaway Palmyra and Gallic Empire, reuniting Rome and earning the title Restorer of the World. However, more interesting was Aurelian's refusal of personal glorification. He rejected the flattery of being called Dominus et Deus, Lord and God, something his predecessors had accepted. Instead, he emphasized his role as a servant of the Roman people, and guardian of order. He built new city walls, reformed currency to fight inflation, and centralized state sponsored religion to restore unity. Was he a philosopher king? Not quite. But Aurelian practiced a kind of pragmatic idealism, one that put the needs of the state above his personal ambition, one that sought deeper moral purpose for his use of power. Let's imagine a conversation between Plato and Aurelian. Plato might criticize Aurelian's reliance on military force. Aurelian might scoff at the philosopher's idealism, but somewhere they'd agree. Leadership must serve something higher. For Plato, this was the form of good, an abstract vision of truth and justice. For Aurelian, it was the unity and survival of his nation, Rome, and the stability of civilization itself. And both shared a belief that leadership should not be about self enrichment, but about responsibility, a theme as relevant today as ever. Plato gave us a dream, a society led by the wise, the just, the thoughtful. Aurelian gave us action, restoring a fractured empire through discipline, reform, and a sense of moral mission. One was a philosopher who imagined a better world. The other was a soldier who saved the one that he had. In a time when we're surrounded by questions about power, who should hold it, how should it be used, and what it means to lead with integrity, we need both kinds of voices. Plato reminds us that ideals matter. Aurelian reminds us that actions matter. And together they form a timeless dialogue about what it means to rule well, and why we must always demand more of those who do. Thank you for joining me today on the Philosophical Inquiries podcast. Let's end with a question. Would you want to live under a philosopher king, or does power, by its very nature, corrupt even the wise? Give your opinion down in the comment section, and thank you for your time.